Alright guys, how you doing? I'm the Alex Man, and today we're installing BudBuilt traction bar. Today I'm installing a BudBuilt high clearance CrossMember. This is for the single case manual transmission 87 Toyota 4Runner. These BudBuilt CrossMembers basically hang down about half an inch or so, 3/4 of an inch below the transmission mount, whereas the factory one hangs down maybe 2 or 3 inches. So this will be a lot better. So you can see the factory one, and you can see how far down it hangs below where it actually mounts up with the transmission mount there. So the BudBuilt one mounts up the same, except that it gains you about 3 inches of clearance. So let's get this thing on. Alright, now these CrossMembers come unpainted. You can opt to have them powder coated, which if you have the extra money, I would recommend it. It's actually pretty nice. But I decided to get it bare metal, which means it's shipped with some sort of oil on there just to keep it from rusting. So we got to wipe that all off, get it nice and clean, and then we can paint it. I just finished washing these with some soap and water, and then I dried them off real quick because I didn't want them to rust. But now I'm wiping them down with some rubbing alcohol, and you can see how dirty the rag's still coming out. So you want to keep doing this, ideally until the rag comes back clean after the rubbing alcohol, because any of that oil, any of this machining oil that's still on here, or shipping oil, anything that's still on there causes paint to not stick as well. Alright, so really the only tools we're going to need to install to remove this CrossMember is the 17 mil and 12 mil. 17 mil for these outside ones, and a 12 mil where it connects to the transmission. Alright, so the lowest point is right here on the drain plug of the transfer case, so we got to remove this little skid plate here so we can put the jack underneath of it. A little bit good, just a couple of 12 mils. Okay, now that the transmission is supported, we can take out these 12mm bolts in here that hold the CrossMember to the transmission mount. Okay, we got all 4 of those guys out of there. Now we can focus on getting the ones on the outside of the CrossMember off. Alright, now I'm going to try to lift this thing up into place and get a couple bolts started. Okay, so we got the bolts all in and tightened. Now we just need to get these 4 lined up. You see they're off by just a tiny bit, but I think a pry bar in there will scoot them over just. Now I'm just going to torque these to 17 foot-pounds. Now we do have a slight clearance issue here with this shield over the double cardan joint. So I think I'm just going to remove this shield here. The new skid plate will probably make that kind of useless anyway. So we'll just pull those 4 bolts off of there. Okay, now that's all done. We got that little shield out of the way. Now we're ready to bolt on the skid. There's the skid plate. Let's bolt it on. Alright, skid plate bolts on with the cutout towards the drive shaft. And we'll just install a couple screws here. And it's bolted on there. Now for bonus points, you can even tighten the bolts down. Alright, so I went for the bonus points. I actually tightened the bolts down there. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. Bolts up nice and easy. I haven't taken it for a drive yet. I want to make sure that everything goes good after the test drive. But so far everything looks good. I do have to touch up some paint right there from I had a 2x4 on a hydraulic jack pushing this thing up to hold it into place. Scarred up my paint a little bit, so I'll have to touch that up. Yep, but now we got tons of clearance. It's all tucked up as close as it can be to the transmission. So that's pretty nice. Plus we got a nice long skid plate there to protect everything. So yeah, we'll have to test this thing out on some trails too, eventually. Alright guys, just a small note about the installation of this CrossMember. It's listed as no drivetrain lift, but it does actually lift the drivetrain up just a hair, and that caused my pinion angle to be off. So right before I did the BudBuilt CrossMember, I installed these old man leaf springs, CS009Rs, and I had no issues with the driveline vibrations that some people have reported. But then I installed this BudBuilt CrossMember, and immediately I was having some issues between like 55 and 65. So you'll see another video here pretty soon about adding the axle shims to correct that. But that's just something that you might want to look out for. It's a possible issue. I don't know if it'll happen to you, but it's just something that you might want to be aware of before you install this. For a trail truck, obviously it doesn't really matter, but a daily driver it probably might cause some issues, or at least some annoyance. So just keep an eye out for that. Alright, well, thanks for watching as always, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it helped you out. So keep an eye out for the next video. Subscribe if you haven't already.